Jake Martinez pressed his face against the transport window and stared at the massive space station floating in the dark. The Galactic Academy looked like a giant metal flower with dozens of curved arms reaching out in all directions. Each arm glowed with different colored lights, blue, green, purple, and colors that Jake had no names for. "First time seeing the Academy?" asked the pilot, a friendly creature that looked like a walking tree with glowing bark. "Yeah," Jake said, his voice shaking a little. "It's huge. Wait until you see the inside. They built it to hold students from 47 different worlds. Each section has its own air, gravity, and temperature controls." Jake nodded and touched the small breathing device clipped to his shirt. Earth air was poison to most aliens, just like their air would kill him in minutes. The device would keep him alive in the common areas where different species mixed together. The transport docked with a soft bump. Jake grabbed his single bag and followed the pilot through the airlock. The first thing that hit him was the smell. A mix of flowers, metal, and something that reminded him of his grandmother's basement. The second thing was the noise. Hundreds of different sounds filled the air as students talked, chirped, buzzed, and made noises that Jake's ears couldn't even process. "Jake Martinez?" A voice spoke from somewhere near his feet. Jake looked down and saw a small robot with a screen for a face. "That's me. I am Guide Unit 7. I will show you to your room and help you find your classes. Please follow me." They walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Jake saw his first alien classmates through the clear walls that separated different atmospheric zones. In one section, jellyfish-like creatures floated in what looked like thick green soup. In another, beings made of pure light danced through the air without any solid bodies at all. "How do they all understand each other?" Jake asked. "Universal translators," Guide Unit 7 replied. "Every student gets one. It changes any language into thoughts you can understand. Very useful for group projects." They stopped at a door marked with symbols that Jake couldn't read. Guide Unit 7 pressed a button and the door slid open. "This is your room. You share it with student Zixtar from the Quartzian system. He should be inside." Jake stepped into the room and immediately felt like he was walking into a jewelry store. The walls, floor, and ceiling were covered in crystals that caught the light and threw rainbow patterns everywhere. In the center of the room, a large crystal cluster pulsed with soft blue light. "Hello," the crystal cluster said in a voice like wind chimes. "You must be Jake. I am Zixtar. I hope you do not mind the decorations. I need the mineral supplements to stay healthy." "No problem," Jake said, setting his bag on what looked like a human bed in the corner. "This is amazing." You really made of crystal?" "Silicon-based life form, yes. My people evolved in the caves of Quartzia Prime. We feed on minerals and communicate through harmonic vibrations." Zixtar's light pulsed brighter. "I am curious about your species." "Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world. How do you survive?" "Such dangerous conditions?" Jake sat on his bed and thought about it. "I guess we just adapt. Earth can be tough, but it's home. Fascinating. On Quartzia, our environment is completely stable. The temperature never changes, the air composition is constant, and we have no dangerous weather patterns. Your world has storms, temperature swings, and predatory animals. Yet you have space travel and complex technology." "We've had to be creative," Jake said with a smile. Guide Unit 7 beeped for attention. "Jake Martinez, your first class begins in 1 hour. Applied Survival Sciences with Professor Kethmore. I suggest you review the course materials." Jake pulled out his tablet and scrolled through the class description. It seemed straightforward, basic survival techniques for different planetary environments. He had earned his Eagle Scout badge back on Earth, so he figured he had a good foundation for the class. "Are you taking survival sciences too?" Jake asked Zixtar. "Yes, though I admit it is challenging for my species. We have never needed to adapt to changing environments. Our survival strategies involve finding stable mineral deposits and establishing harmonic resonance with geological formations." That sounds complicated. Not for us. We can calculate mineral composition and geological stability instantly. It is as natural as breathing is for you. Zixtar paused. Speaking of breathing, how do you process oxygen and nitrogen simultaneously? The chemical reactions should be highly unstable. Jake touched his translator device, wondering if it was working correctly. We just breathe. Our lungs separate what we need and get rid of what we don't. Remarkable. You perform complex chemical processing without conscious thought. No wonder Deathworlds produce such resilient species. A soft chime filled the room. Attention students, a voice announced. Evening meal period begins in 30 minutes. Please report to your designated dining sections. Jake and Zixtar made their way to the dining hall. Jake's section was small, with only 2 other tables occupied. At one sat a girl about his age with dark hair and tired eyes. At the other, a boy with red hair was poking suspiciously at his food. Are you the other humans? Jake asked as he approached with his tray. I'm Lisa Wong, the girl said. Second year student, and this is Danny O'Brien, first year like you. Jake Martinez, nice to meet you both. Where are you from? Danny asked. Colorado, you? Boston. Lisa's from California. Danny held up a forkful of something that looked like purple meatloaf. Any idea what this is supposed to be? Protein? Substitute, Lisa said. It's designed to be safe for human consumption, but it tastes like cardboard. I miss my mom's cooking, Danny said sadly. We all do, Lisa replied. But the education here is incredible. I've learned more about xenobiology in 1 year than I could have learned in a lifetime on Earth. What's your major? Jake asked. Interspecies communication. I want to be a translator when I graduate. What about you? I'm not sure yet. I want to see what classes are like first. Smart approach, Lisa said. The professors here are brilliant, but they sometimes forget that human brains work differently than theirs. Professor Kethmore is great, though. You'll like survival sciences. Is it hard? Danny and Lisa exchanged glances. Define hard, Danny said carefully. What do you mean? Well, Lisa said slowly, the concepts are challenging for most species. But for humans, let's just say you might find it interesting. Jake was about to ask what she meant when the lights dimmed slightly. Rest period begins in 1 hour, the announcement voice said. All students should return to their rooms for sleep cycle preparation. As they walked back through the corridors, Jake noticed that the station was settling into its night routine. The light zones dimmed, the noise levels dropped, and many of the atmospheric sections shifted to what he guessed were nighttime conditions for different species. Tomorrow will be interesting, Zixtar said as they entered their room. I am curious to see how survival sciences challenges a Deathworld species. Jake lay on his bed and stared at the crystal formations on the ceiling. Everything here was so different from Earth, the technology, the aliens, even the air he breathed. But somehow he felt ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. After all, he had survived 18 years on one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy. How hard could a survival class be? Jake walked into Professor Kethmer's classroom and immediately felt like he was underwater. The room was filled with a thick, blue-green atmosphere that made everything look wavy and strange. His breathing device worked harder to filter the air, making a soft humming sound. Professor Kethmer floated in the center of the room, his 8 tentacles moving slowly through the liquid-like air. He looked like a giant octopus, but his skin changed colors as he spoke. Jake's translator turned the professor's bubbling sounds into clear English. Welcome, students, to Applied Survival Sciences. Today we begin a project that will test your ability to adapt and survive in unknown environments. Jake looked around at his classmates. Besides Zixtar, who sat in a special mineral-enriched section, there were about 20 other students. A cloud of purple gas that called itself Velanara hovered near the ceiling. Something that looked like a walking plant with too many eyes sat in a dirt-filled box. A creature made of what appeared to be liquid metal flowed slowly across a specially designed desk. This semester's major assignment, Professor Kethmer continued, his tentacles changing from blue to green, is a survival scenario simulation. Each of you will receive parameters for a different planet. Your task is to create a comprehensive survival plan for a 30-day period on that world. A student that looked like a fuzzy ball with arms raised one of its appendages. Professor, will we have access to our species' standard survival equipment? No equipment, no technology. You must survive using only what you can find or create on the planet itself. The professor's skin turned orange, which Jake's translator indicated meant emphasis. This is about pure survival instinct and environmental adaptation. Jake felt excited. This sounded like an advanced camping trip. He had spent weeks in the Colorado wilderness with just a backpack and basic supplies. How different could an alien? Planet B, the assignment parameters will be distributed now, Professor Kethmer announced. Each planet has been carefully selected to challenge your species' particular strengths and weaknesses. A small device on Jake's desk beeped and displayed a holographic projection. Numbers and symbols floated in the air above it, slowly translating into English. Planet designation, Kepler 442c, class, terrestrial. Gravity, 1.2 Earth standard. Atmosphere, 78% nitrogen, 19% oxygen, 3% other gases. Temperature range, 15 to 25 degrees Celsius. Day length, 26 hours. Moons, 2, water, abundant liquid water in lakes, rivers, and oceans. Life forms, various plant and animal species. Terrain. Mixed forests, grasslands, mountains, and coastal areas. Jake stared at the display and blinked. This planet sounded nicer than most places on Earth. The temperature never got too hot or too cold. There was plenty of water and oxygen. The gravity was only slightly higher than Earth's. He looked over at Zixtar's assignment. His roommate's planet was a barren rock world, with no atmosphere and surface temperatures that swung between 200 degrees above zero and 150 degrees below zero. The only resources were various mineral deposits buried deep underground. Velanara. The purple gas creature had been assigned to a gas giant with constant chemical storms and pressure changes that would crush most solid beings. The plant-like student was looking at a desert world with acid rain and no soil. You have 3 weeks to prepare your survival plans, Professor Kethmer announced. Presentations will be held in the main auditorium. You will explain your strategy to survive for 30 days on your assigned world. After class, Jake walked with Zixtar toward the library. His roommate's crystal structure was flickering with rapid light patterns, which Jake had learned meant he was thinking hard. This assignment is quite challenging, Zixtar said. My planet has no stable mineral formations on the surface. I will need to calculate deep excavation techniques and thermal regulation methods. Sounds tough, Jake agreed, though he was still trying to figure out what made his assignment difficult. They found a quiet study area in the library. Zixtar immediately began projecting complex mathematical equations into the air, calculating excavation angles and mineral extraction rates. His light patterns moved so fast that Jake got dizzy watching them. Jake pulled out his tablet and started making notes about his planet. Water sources would be easy to find with all those lakes and rivers. The temperature range meant he wouldn't need to worry about freezing or overheating. The day length was close to Earth, so his sleep cycle wouldn't be disrupted. How is your planning progressing? Zixtar asked during a break in his calculations. Pretty good. I think I'll set up camp near a water source, maybe build a shelter, figure out what plants are safe to eat. Zixtar's light pattern stopped completely. That is your entire plan. Well, I need to think about it more. But those are the basics. Jake, this is a survival scenario on an unknown world. How will you determine water safety without chemical analysis equipment? How will you identify edible plants without botanical databases? How will you construct shelter without materials engineering? Jake thought about it. I guess I'll test the water by watching what animals drink from it. For plants, I'll observe what the local wildlife eats. And for shelter, I'll use whatever materials are available: wood, rocks, maybe mud. You would consume unknown substances based on animal behavior observations? Sure, if the local animals are drinking from the stream and they look healthy, the water is probably safe. Same with plants. Zixtar's entire structure began to pulse with confused light patterns. But animals on alien worlds might have completely different biology. Their safe foods could be toxic to you? That's possible, Jake admitted, but you can usually tell. Animals that are similar to Earth animals probably have similar needs. How could you possibly know which animals are similar to Earth animals? Jake scratched his head. I don't know. You just look at them. You can tell if something is like a deer or a bird or a fish. Without detailed biological analysis? Yeah, Zixtar was quiet for a long moment. Your species evolved on a world where you had to make these determinations instinctively. I guess so. Earth has lots of different environments and dangerous things. You learn to read the signs. What signs? Well, clear running water is usually safer than standing water. Animals that run away when they see you are usually prey animals, which means they're probably safe to eat. Plants that are being eaten by lots of different animals are usually not toxic. These are calculations you perform automatically? They're not really calculations, you just . Jake spent the next hour trying to explain basic survival concepts to Zixtar. How to read weather patterns by looking at clouds. How to find direction using the sun and stars. How to identify different types of animal tracks and what they meant. Each explanation seemed to confuse his roommate more. Zixtar kept asking for the mathematical formulas and chemical equations that Jake was using to make these determinations. I'm not using formulas, Jake insisted. Humans just evolved to notice these things. Your species processes environmental data subconsciously? I guess you could say that. Remarkable. My people require extensive calculations to determine even basic environmental factors. We must analyze mineral compositions, measure harmonic frequencies, and calculate structural stability for everything. Jake looked at his assignment again. Zixtar, what makes this planet challenging for humans? Well, it is an unknown world with unfamiliar life forms, unpredictable weather patterns, and no technological support systems. But look at the specifications. The temperature is perfect. There's plenty of water and oxygen. The gravity is manageable. Yes, but you would have no knowledge of which resources are safe to use. That's what makes it interesting, not difficult. Zixtar's light patterns became very dim. Jake, I believe you do not fully understand the nature of this assignment. What do you mean? Professor Kethmer designed these scenarios to push each species to their limits. He gave you what he considers a survival challenge for a Deathworld species. Jake read through his assignment parameters one more time. Slowly he began to understand. Zixtar, this planet he gave me. It's actually easier to survive on than Earth. How is that possible? Earth has freezing winters and scorching summers. We have hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, and floods. We have poisonous plants, dangerous animals, and diseases. This planet has none of that. Then why would Professor Kethmer assign it to you? Jake leaned back in his chair and smiled. I think he doesn't know what humans are actually capable of. Over the next few days, Jake watched his classmates struggle with their assignments. The plant student was developing complex chemical processes to neutralize acid rain. The liquid metal creature was designing elaborate pressure regulation systems. Velinara was creating multidimensional weather prediction models. Jake spent about an hour each day working on his plan. He drew simple diagrams of camp layouts, made lists of basic tools he could make from natural materials, and noted different methods for finding and preparing food. Is that really your entire survival plan? Danny asked one evening in the human dining section. Pretty much. Why? Lisa and I have been working on our assignments for weeks. They're incredibly complex. What planet did you get? An ice world with constant blizzards and temperatures that drop to -50 degrees. Presentation day arrived with a buzz of nervous energy throughout the academy. Jake woke up to find Zixtar already awake, his crystal structure pulsing with rapid light patterns that meant he was reviewing his calculations one last time. Good morning, Jake. Are you prepared for your presentation? Jake stretched and yawned. Yeah, I think so. I've got everything written down. I have been refining my mineral extraction algorithms all night. The thermal regulation formulas alone required 847 separate calculations. Jake looked at his own notes, which fit on 2 pages. That sounds complicated. Survival sciences requires precision. One miscalculation could mean death. Zixtar's lights dimmed with worry. I hope Professor Kethmore finds my approach acceptable. They made their way to the main auditorium, which was already filling with students and faculty from across the academy. Jake had never seen so many different species in one place before. The auditorium had been divided into dozens of different environmental zones to accommodate everyone. The aquatic section was filled with blue-green water where fish-like creatures swam in slow circles. The high-gravity zone had beings that looked like walking rocks moving in heavy, deliberate steps. In the energy section, creatures made of pure light danced and flickered without solid bodies. Jake found his assigned seat in the human section, which was small and tucked between the carbon-based life forms and the silicon-based students. Danny and Lisa were already there, both looking nervous. "How did your preparation go?" Lisa asked. "Pretty good." "You?" "I've been working 16 hours a day for the past week. My atmospheric processing plan has over 100 different chemical reactions mapped out. Mine has thermal calculations, shelter engineering, and resource allocation algorithms," Danny added. "What about you?" "I made some diagrams and lists." They stared at him. "That's it?" Danny asked. "Well, I thought about it a lot too." Professor Kethmore floated to the center of the auditorium. His tentacles had turned a deep purple color, which Jake's translator indicated meant formal announcement mode. "Welcome, students and faculty, to our Applied Survival Sciences presentations. Today, our students will demonstrate their ability to adapt and survive in challenging environments using only their natural abilities and available resources." The first presenter was Velanara, the purple gas creature. She floated to the presentation platform, which immediately filled with a thick, swirling atmosphere that matched her natural environment. "My assigned world is gas giant Kepler-16b." She began, her voice sounding like wind through leaves. "The constant chemical storms and pressure variations create an extremely unstable environment." Images appeared in the air above her, showing massive storm systems and complicated chemical formulas. "My survival strategy involves creating localized atmospheric bubbles using controlled chemical reactions. By manipulating the existing storm patterns, I can establish temporary safe zones." She went on to explain how she would harvest energy from lightning strikes, process methane and hydrogen for nutrition, and create communication networks using electrical impulses. The presentation took 20 minutes and included hundreds of mathematical equations floating in the air. The audience murmured appreciatively. Several professors took notes on their various recording devices. Next came Zixtar. Jake felt nervous for his roommate as he moved to the presentation area. The platform filled with glowing crystals that resonated with harmonic frequencies. "My world is Mineral World Kepler-78b, Zixtar announced, his voice creating musical tones. "Surface temperatures range from 200 degrees above zero to 150 degrees below zero, with no atmosphere and unstable geological formations." His presentation showed complex three-dimensional models of underground cave systems. "I will use resonance harmonics to locate stable mineral deposits, then establish thermal regulation through controlled crystal growth patterns." Jake watched as his roommate displayed equations for calculating mineral hardness, thermal conductivity, and structural stability. The mathematical formulas were so complex that they made Jake's head hurt. "By growing specific crystal matrices, I can create underground chambers that maintain stable temperatures and provide necessary mineral nutrition for the full 30-day period." The presentation ended with a detailed timeline showing exactly when each crystal formation would be grown and how the thermal regulation system would adapt to changing surface conditions. Professor Kethmore's tentacles turned bright green with approval. "Excellent work, Zixtar. Your harmonic resonance calculations are particularly sophisticated." The next several presentations followed similar patterns. Each student had created incredibly detailed survival plans with complex calculations, engineering diagrams, and scientific formulas. The plant student showed how to neutralize acid rain using biological filtration systems. The liquid metal creature demonstrated pressure regulation techniques that involved reshaping its molecular structure. Each presentation took 15 to 20 minutes and included hundreds of calculations. The students had clearly spent weeks developing their survival strategies. Finally, Professor Kethmer called Jake's name. Jake Martinez, please present your survival plan for planet Kepler 442c. Jake walked to the presentation platform carrying his tablet and a few sheets of paper. The platform adjusted to human atmospheric requirements, and Jake could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching him. "Hi, everyone," he began, his voice sounding small in the huge auditorium. "I got assigned to a planet called Kepler 442c. He displayed his first diagram, which showed a simple camp layout. "My plan is to set up a base camp near a water source, build some basic shelter, and establish sustainable food gathering." The audience was quiet. Jake continued, showing his hand-drawn sketches of lean-to shelters, fire pits, and tool-making techniques. "First, I'll find a good location near fresh water but not too close to avoid flooding. I'll look for a spot that's protected from wind but gets some sunlight. Maybe near some trees for building materials." He could hear confused murmurs from the audience. Some of the alien students were making questioning sounds in their various languages. "For shelter, I'll build a simple lean-to using fallen branches and whatever natural materials I can find. Maybe some kind of thatched roof if there's grass or leaves available." Professor Kethmer raised one of his tentacles. "Jake, could you explain the mathematical calculations you used to determine structural stability for your shelter design?" "Oh, I didn't use any calculations, I just build it sturdy enough to hold up." "How do you determine sturdy enough?" "Without structural analysis?" Jake thought about it. "Well, you test it. If it falls down, you make it stronger." The auditorium grew very quiet. Jake continued with his presentation, explaining his plans for finding food, making tools, and staying safe. "For food, I'll observe what the local animals eat. If they're eating certain plants and they look healthy, those plants are probably safe for me too." A student that looked like a walking flower raised several arm-like appendages. "How do you determine if the animals are healthy without medical analysis?" "You can tell by looking at them. Healthy animals move normally, have bright eyes, good posture, clean fur or feathers." "You can assess alien biology through visual observation." "Well, yeah. A sick animal acts sick no matter what planet it's from." The confused murmurs grew louder. Jake showed his next diagram, which illustrated basic tool-making techniques. "I'll make cutting tools from sharp stones, maybe find some metals if there are any exposed. Build a fire for cooking and warmth." "How will you create fire without ignition equipment?" "Asked a creature that looked like a living crystal formation." Friction method. "Rub two sticks together until they get hot enough to start a fire." "You can generate sufficient thermal energy through manual friction?" "Sure, it takes practice, but it works." Jake finished his presentation by showing a simple timeline. Day 1, find a good location and build basic shelter. Day 2, establish a reliable fire and start identifying food sources. Day 3, make some basic tools. After that, it's just maintaining the camp and gathering food. The auditorium was completely silent when he finished. Jake looked around at the confused faces staring at him. "Any questions?" he asked. Professor Kethmer's tentacles had turned a color that Jake's translator couldn't identify. "Jake, your presentation was quite different from your classmates." "I tried to keep it simple." "Yes, you certainly did." The professor's tentacles shifted colors rapidly. "Could you explain how you determined that these techniques would be sufficient for survival on an unknown alien world?" "Well, the planet seems pretty nice. Good temperature, plenty of water, breathable air. It's actually easier than most places on Earth." "Easier than Earth?" "Yeah, Earth has extreme weather, dangerous animals, poisonous plants, natural disasters. This planet looks pretty calm." The auditorium erupted in confused chatter. Students turned to each other, making questioning sounds in dozens of different Languages. Professor Kethmore raised his tentacles for silence. Jake, are you saying that planet Kepler 442c is less challenging than your homeworld? Definitely. The temperature never gets below 15 degrees or above 25 degrees. That's perfect weather. On Earth, I've camped in snow and in desert heat. This would be like a vacation. The silence in the auditorium stretched on for what felt like forever. Jake could see alien faces turning toward each other, some making confused sounds, others just staring at him with expressions he couldn't read. Professor Kethmore's tentacles had stopped changing colors and were now a deep orange that Jake's translator labeled as processing complex information. The professor floated closer to Jake's section of the auditorium. Jake, he said slowly, I believe there may be some misunderstanding about your assignment. Perhaps you did not fully comprehend the challenge parameters. I don't think so, Jake replied. 30 days on planet Kepler 442c, no equipment, survive using only natural resources. Yes, but you seem to think this would be ... easy. Well, not easy exactly, but definitely manageable. A student who looked like a giant butterfly with crystal wings spoke up from the flying section. Human Jake, you stated that this planet is less dangerous than your homeworld. How is this possible when your homeworld supports your species? Jake stood up so more people could see him. Earth supports humans, but it's not designed for us. We evolved to survive Earth's dangers, not to live comfortably. What dangers? Asked Velanara, her purple gas form swirling with curiosity. Well, temperature for one. In winter, it can get so cold that exposed skin freezes in minutes. In summer, it gets so hot that you can die from heat stroke. The planet I got assigned has perfect temperature all year round. Murmurs rippled through the audience. A rock-like creature from the high-gravity section rumbled a question. Your species evolved to survive extreme temperature variations? We evolved to survive lots of things. Storms that can destroy entire cities, earthquakes that split the ground open, floods that wash away everything, droughts that last for years. And you survived these without technology? This came from a creature that looked like it was made of living metal. People have been surviving on Earth for hundreds of thousands of years. We only invented advanced technology recently. Professor Kethmore's tentacles began turning different colors again. Jake, could you be more specific about Earth's survival challenges? Jake thought about where to start. Well, weather is a big one. We have hurricanes with winds fast enough to throw cars around, tornadoes that can level entire towns, blizzards that dump meters of snow and freeze everything solid. The audience was completely quiet now. Even the creatures that had been making background noise stopped. Then there are the animals. Earth has predators that actively hunt humans, bears that can crush bones with their jaws, big cats that can take down prey much larger than themselves, snakes with venom that can kill in minutes. A student that looked like a walking tree spoke up. Your world has active predators that target your species? Not specifically target us, but they'll attack if they're hungry or threatened. Plus we have smaller dangerous animals. Spiders whose bite can make you very sick. Insects that carry diseases. Fish that can poison you if you eat them wrong. How do you identify which animals are dangerous? Asked Zixtar. Experience mostly? You learn to recognize warning signs. Bright colors often mean poison. Certain sounds mean danger. The way an animal moves tells you if it's aggressive. You process this information instinctively? Yeah, you have to. If you wait too long to decide, you might get hurt. Professor. Kethmore floated closer. Jake, you mentioned that your planet has unstable weather patterns. How do you predict these patterns without meteorological equipment? You watch the sky. Certain cloud formations mean storms are coming. Changes in wind direction, air pressure, temperature. Animals behave differently before bad weather. You can detect atmospheric pressure changes? Sort of. You feel it in your ears, your joints. Some people get headaches before storms. The plant-like student rustled its leaves nervously. You detect environmental changes through physical sensations? Sure, your body tells you lots of things. If the air smells wrong, there might be a fire or chemical danger. If water tastes funny, it might be contaminated. If your skin feels tingly, there might be electrical activity in the air. You taste unknown substances to determine safety? This came from a creature that looked like a floating jellyfish. In small amounts, yeah. Your tongue can detect lots of dangerous chemicals. Bitter tastes often mean poison. Metallic tastes might mean contamination. The auditorium erupted in shocked chatter. Students turned to each other, making sounds of disbelief and amazement. "Are you telling us," Professor Kethmer said, his tentacles now bright red, "that humans routinely consume unknown substances as a safety testing method? Well, you don't just eat random stuff, you observe first. See what animals are eating, smell it, test tiny amounts. If nothing bad happens, you try a little more. And if something bad does happen, then you know not to eat it. Usually you can tell pretty quickly." A student who looked like a living crystal formation pulsed with confused lights. "But what if the substance is lethal? Then you die and other humans learn not to eat that thing." The silence that followed was absolute. Jake could hear the hum of the station's life support systems and the distant sounds of other activities elsewhere in the academy. "Your species learns survival techniques through death?" Professor Kethmer's voice was barely a whisper. "Sometimes. But usually you can avoid the really dangerous stuff if you're careful and observant." Danny stood up in the human section. "Professor, I think Jake is explaining this wrong. Humans don't just randomly risk death. We have accumulated knowledge, passed down through generations." "Thank you, Danny," Jake said. "That's true. We teach each other what we've learned. But someone had to figure it out first." "Through trial and error," Lisa added, "including fatal errors. Your species developed survival knowledge through generational sacrifice," said Velinara, her gas form swirling with what looked like amazement. "I guess you could put it that way," Jake said. Professor Kethmer's tentacles were cycling through colors, so fast they looked like a rainbow. "Jake, let me understand this correctly. Humans evolved on a world with extreme weather, natural disasters, predatory animals, poisonous organisms, and contaminated resources. To survive, you developed the ability to process environmental data. Through sensory input, detect danger through physical sensation, and assess safety through controlled exposure to risk." "That sounds right. And you do this without conscious calculation or technological assistance." "Yeah, it's just natural." "What you call natural, we would call impossible," said Zixtar from the Silicon section. "Why impossible?" "Because," said the Crystal Butterfly student, "the computational power required to process that much environmental data simultaneously would require quantum processing matrices." But you're doing it with biological neural networks," added the liquid metal creature. "In real time," said the plant student. "While performing other survival tasks," said Velinara. Jake looked around at all the amazed faces. "It's not that complicated. You just pay attention to what's happening around you." "Jake," Professor Kethmer said slowly, "what you describe as paying attention involves processing thousands of environmental variables simultaneously, analyzing threat patterns, calculating risk probabilities, and making split-second decisions. That could mean life or death?" "When you put it that way, it sounds harder than it is." "No, Jake, when you put it your way, it sounds easier than it is. What you're describing is beyond the capabilities of most species in the galaxy." The auditorium had grown quiet again as everyone absorbed this information. "So," said a student that looked like a walking cactus, "when you were assigned planet? Kepler 442c, you saw stable temperature, abundant water, breathable atmosphere, and no extreme weather patterns." "Right. And you concluded that this would be easier than Earth because Earth has all of those dangers plus many more." "Exactly. Which means," said Professor Kethmer, "that what I designed as a challenging survival scenario for a Deathworld species is actually a vacation planet by your standards." Jake thought about it. "Yeah, pretty much. I'd probably enjoy it." "You would enjoy a 30-day survival scenario on an unknown alien world." "Sure, good weather, clean air, no dangerous animals. Mentioned in the parameters, sounds relaxing." The professor's tentacles went completely still. Jake, I believe I have made a serious error in my understanding of Deathworld species. What do you mean? I designed your assignment to be challenging. I gave you a planet that would test your survival skills without being impossible. Okay. But I based my assessment on the assumption that Deathworld species would find survival challenging under any circumstances. I did not realize that Earth is so dangerous that most other planets would seem safe by comparison. Oh, Jake, could you tell us more about what you would consider a challenging survival scenario? Jake thought about it. Well, you'd need some real dangers. Maybe extreme weather that changes unpredictably. Predators that are smart enough to hunt humans specifically. Limited water sources that might be contaminated. Poisonous plants that look like safe ones. Unstable terrain that could collapse or shift. Natural disasters? Sure, earthquakes, volcanic activity, flash floods. Maybe some kind of seasonal migration of dangerous animals. What about day-night cycles? 3 days after the presentations, Jake found himself standing in the Academy's Biodome laboratory surrounded by nearly 200 alien students and faculty members. Word had spread quickly through the station's communication networks about the human who thought survival scenarios were easy. Are you sure about this, Jake? Professor Kethmore asked, his tentacles shifting between orange and purple with worry. We have medical teams standing by, but if something goes wrong, I'll be fine, Jake said, looking around at the artificial wilderness that had been created for the demonstration. The biodome contained a small forest, a stream, some rocky areas, and various Earth-like plants that had been imported for botanical studies. The environment has been made as Earth-like as possible, said Dr. Hilixandra, the Academy's Xenobiology department head. She looked like a tall, thin tree with too many branches, and her voice sounded like wind through leaves. But we cannot guarantee that all the plant and animal life will be familiar to you. That's okay. Part of survival is dealing with unfamiliar things. Jake walked to the center of the biodome, carrying nothing but the clothes on his back. The watching aliens were arranged in observation galleries that surrounded the dome, each section climate-controlled for different species. Remember, Professor Kethmore announced, Jake will have no equipment, no tools, and no technological assistance. He will attempt to demonstrate basic survival techniques using only materials found in the environment. Jake looked around and immediately started assessing his surroundings. The stream was running clear and had small fish visible in the water. The trees looked similar to oaks and maples from Earth. There were berry bushes, some flowering plants, and what looked like edible mushrooms growing near fallen logs. First thing is to find a good spot for camp, Jake said loudly, knowing that his voice was being broadcast to the observation galleries. I want to be near water, but not too close in case of flooding. High enough to avoid dampness, but protected from wind. He walked around for a few minutes and found a spot about 50 meters from the stream, near some large rocks and with good tree cover overhead. This looks good. Now I need to start a fire before I do anything else. Jake gathered dry grass, small twigs, and larger branches. He found 2 pieces of wood that looked suitable for making fire by friction. The alien audience watched in fascination as he began the process of creating a fire. You're actually going to create combustion through manual friction? Asked a student. That looked like a walking crystal formation. Yeah, it just takes patience, Jake replied, continuing to rub the stick against the wooden base. After several minutes, smoke began to rise from the wood. He's actually doing it, whispered Velinara from her gas-filled observation section. Jake carefully transferred the glowing ember to his nest of dry grass and blew gently until flames appeared. The watching aliens made sounds of amazement in dozens of different languages. Fire accomplished, Jake announced, feeding small twigs to the growing flame. Now I need shelter and then food. He began constructing a simple lean-to shelter using fallen branches and leaves. As he worked, he kept up a running commentary for his audience. The key is to make it sturdy enough to handle wind and rain, but not so heavy that it might collapse. You want to keep body heat in and moisture out. How do you determine the correct structural angles without mathematical calculations? Asked Zixtar from the silicon-based section. You just look at it. If it looks stable, it probably is. If it looks wobbly, you reinforce it? That is completely unscientific, said a student that looked like a floating jellyfish. Maybe, but it works. Jake finished his shelter in about an hour, then turned his attention to food. He walked to the stream and examined the water carefully. Water. Looks clean and it's moving fast, which is good. I can see fish and there are no dead animals or strange smells. He cupped some water in his hands and tasted it. The watching aliens made sounds of shock and horror. He's consuming untested alien water, said Dr. Helixandra in amazement. Tastes fine, Jake announced. Now for food. He spent the next hour examining plants and berries. He found some mushrooms that looked similar to ones he knew from Earth, and berries that appeared to be growing on bush that looked like Earth plants. These berries are being eaten by the local birds, he explained, pointing to a small flock of bird-like creatures. The birds look healthy and active, so the berries are probably safe. You're basing nutritional safety on the behavior of unknown. Alien wildlife? Asked Professor Kethmer. Sure, birds are birds, pretty much. If they can eat something and they're not sick, it's probably okay for me too. Jake ate a few berries, then some of the mushrooms. He caught a fish from the stream using a simple trap made from rocks and sticks. Fish is definitely safe, he said, cleaning and preparing it by the fire. Fish are fish. This one looks and smells normal. As the day continued, Jake demonstrated various survival techniques. He showed how to make simple tools from stones and sticks. He explained how to read weather patterns by observing clouds and wind changes. He demonstrated how to track animals by following their footprints and other signs. The most important thing, he said as he cooked his fish over the fire, is to stay calm and think clearly. Panic kills more people than actual dangers do. Jake, called Professor Kethmer, you have been in this environment for 6 hours. How do you feel? Pretty. Good, this is actually quite pleasant. The weather is nice. There's plenty of food and water, and no dangerous animals that I've seen. You would be comfortable staying here for 30 days? Definitely, I might even enjoy it. The alien audience was buzzing with excited conversation. Jake could hear fragments of translation coming through his device as students discussed what they had witnessed. Impossible biological capabilities, said one voice. Intuitive environmental processing, said another. Natural survival instincts beyond quantum calculation abilities, said a third. Dr. Helixandra activated the communication system. Jake, we would like to extend this demonstration if you're willing. Could you show us more advanced survival techniques? Sure, what would you like to see? How would you handle a more challenging scenario? Perhaps with limited resources or hostile conditions? Jake thought about it. Well, you could reduce the water sources, add some dangerous animals, maybe simulate bad weather. What about predator? Animals? That would make it more interesting. Nothing too dangerous, but something that would hunt humans. We could simulate pack hunters, creatures that use coordinated attack strategies. That sounds good. Pack hunters are tricky because you have to outwit the whole group, not just individual animals. The aliens in the observation galleries were making sounds of disbelief. The idea that Jake was volunteering for more challenging conditions seemed to confuse them. Over the next few days, Jake's demonstration became the most popular event in Academy history. Students and faculty from across the galaxy requested permission to observe. The biodome was reconfigured multiple times to present different challenges, and Jake adapted to each one with techniques that amazed his audience. He showed how to find water in dry conditions, how to create weapons for defense against predators, how to preserve food for long-term storage, and how to navigate using natural landmarks. What you're demonstrating, Professor Kethmer said on the third day, represents survival capabilities that we didn't know were possible for biological organisms. Really? This is just basic stuff? Jake, you are processing environmental data, calculating risk probabilities, and making survival decisions at a rate that would require our most advanced computer systems. It doesn't feel like calculating. It just feels like paying attention. That's exactly what makes it so remarkable. Your species has evolved to perform these calculations subconsciously. Dr. Alexandra joined the conversation. Jake, we would like to propose something. Would you be willing to teach a class on Deathworld survival techniques? I'm not really a teacher. You wouldn't be teaching the techniques themselves. Most species couldn't physically perform them. But you could teach the principles, the way of thinking about survival problems. I guess I could try. We're also proposing a new field of study, applied Deathworld sciences. The study of how species from hostile worlds develop survival capabilities. Jake looked around at all the eager alien faces watching him. You really want to study human survival techniques? Not just human, said Professor Kethmore. There are other Deathworld species in the galaxy, though very few. We want to understand how hostile environments create such remarkable adaptive abilities. And we want to learn from you, added Dr. Alexandra. Your species has developed solutions to survival problems that we never even knew existed. Jake spent the rest of the semester teaching survival principles to alien students. He couldn't teach them to start fires by friction or track animals by scent, but he could teach them how to think about survival problems. The key, he would tell his classes, is to work with your environment instead of against it. Don't try to control nature. Learn from it and adapt to it. His students found this concept difficult to understand. Most galactic species had learned to control their environments through technology. The idea of adapting to natural conditions instead of changing them was completely foreign.